I never planned to move back home. I had just started settling into my new apartment. Steady job, decent friends, freedom. After years of being the invisible middle child, I finally felt like I had space to breathe, to figure out who I was without being compared to my siblings every 5 minutes. Then came the phone call. It was a cold Thursday evening. I remember because I had just ordered takeout and was halfway through a rerun of The Office. The phone rang, and I almost didn't pick up. It was Mom. She rarely called me unless she needed something. When I answered, her voice was shaky, like she was trying to hold something in. "It's your dad," she said. "He's sick. It's bad. Stage 4 lung cancer. No cure. Just management. Till it couldn't be managed anymore. Let me tell you something about my family. We were never close. My older brother Kyle was the golden boy. Straight A's football captain, business. Degree, now living in another state with his equally insufferable wife. My younger sister Ava was the sweet baby of the family. Everyone loved Ava. She could crash the car and somehow get praised for her bravery. And me, I was just there. Not quite a screw-up, but not special enough to matter. Quiet, reliable, forgettable. I never caused problems, which is probably why I was always the one they expected to fix problems. So when Dad got sick, guess who they all turned to? Yep, Mom was in denial. She said she was too emotionally fragile to handle it all and started spending more time with her spiritual healing group. AKA her wine-drunk book club. Kyle sent a polite but firm email about how his career couldn't afford the interruption. Ava called once and said, "Let me know if you need anything." Then disappeared back into her influencer lifestyle of oat milk lattes and weekend getaways. So I did it. I packed up my life, left my job, ended a situationship that was going nowhere anyway, and moved back into my childhood home. At first, it was manageable. Dad was still lucid, still able to do basic tasks. We laughed sometimes. He wasn't perfect. Even close, but there were moments when he seemed softer, like the illness peeled away his gruff layers and left behind someone almost tender. I cooked, cleaned, took him to doctor's appointments, dealt with insurance calls, meds, hospice consultations. It wasn't glamorous. It was exhausting. I gave up everything to be there for him, and not once did Kyle or Ava visit. They didn't call to check in on him, didn't ask how I was holding up. They didn't even send money to help with the bills. And Mom, she flitted in and out like a ghost. Was more concerned about how her grieving wife aesthetic played out on Facebook than actually being there for her husband. Still, I stayed because someone had to. There were good days, days when Dad would sit with me on the porch, watching the birds and telling stories about when he was my age. He confessed things I never expected, how he regretted not being more involved when we were kids. How he wished he'd told Mom no more often. How proud he was of me for stepping up. He told me about the house, how it was falling apart, but he couldn't bear to sell it because it held every memory of our family. He said, "If I go, I want you to have it. You're the only one who gave a damn." It caught me off guard. I wasn't doing this for a reward. I never even thought about what would happen after he was gone. But hearing him say that made all the sleepless nights and anxiety attacks feel seen. He wanted me to have the house. Said it over and over. 2 years in, things got harder. He couldn't walk without help. He forgot names. Sometimes he forgot who I was. I'd find him crying in the hallway or curled up in bed, whispering things like, "Please don't let me die alone," and I didn't. I was there every second, every fall, every infection, every breath that sounded a little too shallow. I was the one who bathed him when it got too much. I was the one who argued with doctors when they wanted to give up. I was the one holding his. And the night he finally slipped away, he died in my arms. No Kyle, no Ava, just me, and I buried him. Alone, the funeral was small. A few neighbors, a couple of his old friends from work, and me. I gave the eulogy because no one else would. I talked about the man he was, the one most people didn't get to see. I cried harder than I ever thought I would. Then, just as I was getting ready to head home exhausted, grief-drained, I saw their cars pull up Kyle, Ava, and Mom. They showed up after the service. Ava had sunglasses on, like she was a damn celebrity. Kyle looked annoyed, like someone dragged him to a PTA meeting, and Mom? She walked over and gave me a weak hug like I hadn't been the one who watched her husband die while she played pretend widow on social media. Then Kyle said the words that made my stomach drop. So when are we going to talk about the house? I stood there, still in my black dress, the one I wore for my father's funeral just hours earlier, and my brother had the nerve to ask when we were going to talk about the house. Like it was a business deal, like he'd just come from a meeting and needed to get this nuisance checked off his list. I stared at him for a second, trying to figure out if he was serious. Maybe this was some twisted attempt at humor, but his expression was flat. Impatient. I'm sorry. I asked. Ava took off her sunglasses. She didn't look sad. She looked bored, you know. Dad didn't leave a will, so we figured we should. I'll sit down and talk about what happens next. I felt my stomach turn. You figured what? Kyle stepped forward, arms crossed like he was trying to assert dominance. Look, we're not trying to make this harder than it is. But Dad didn't leave a will. So legally, we all have a claim to the house. We just want what's fair. 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 Took care of our father for 5 years. I gave up my job, my social life, my mental health. I cleaned up his mess, sometimes literally. I watched his body fail, piece by piece, buried him. And these 3, the ones who didn't even show up until after the service, wanted to talk about what was fair. You haven't been here, I said, my voice shaking. You didn't help. You didn't care. And now you want to split the house. Mom had the audacity to chime in. Sweetheart, your father would have wanted us all to work together? No? I snapped. Dad told me he wanted me to have the house. Repeatedly. I took care of him. I was there, and he said it more than once. Kyle rolled his eyes. Well, did he write it down? 'Cause if he didn't, it doesn't count. That was the moment something inside me cracked after they left, because yes. I kicked them out. I went digging through Dad's files. I remembered he had a small folder with documents labeled important stuff. I hadn't looked in it after he died. I wasn't ready. But now, I was desperate. And there it was, a handwritten note, dated 2 years before he passed, signed by him. It wasn't a formal will, but it clearly stated, if something happens to me, I want my daughter to have the house. She's the only one who stayed. I took it to a lawyer the next day. He was honest with me. This isn't airtight. In some states, handwritten notes like this called holographic wills can hold up. In others, not so much. But it helps. I didn't want a lawsuit. I didn't want a courtroom. I just wanted peace. But that wasn't going to happen. Kyle and Ava came back a week later with a lawyer. They were trying to force the sale of the house, said it was technically part of Dad's estate and subject to equal division. Their lawyer sent a formal notice, said if I didn't agree to sell and split the proceeds, they'd file a partition action in court. I was livid. I was heartbroken. But mostly I was done. So I lawyered up too. The legal battle lasted months. During that time, I lived like I was walking through fog. My grief had no room to breathe. Every time I tried to mourn Dad, I'd get a letter in the mail from their attorney. Every time I sat on the porch, the one where Dad and I used to watch the sunset, I'd think about how Kyle and Ava wanted to put it on the market. They didn't care about the memories, they cared about the money, to make it worse. Mom took their side. She started posting cryptic things on Facebook about ungrateful children and families being torn apart by greed. Then she had the gall to message me privately, saying maybe it would just be easier if you sold the house. It's only walls and furniture. No, Mom, it wasn't. It was where Dad taught me how to fix a leaky sink, where he told me he was scared of dying, where he said, "You're the only one I trust." But to them, it was a check waiting to be cashed. There was one night I'll never forget. I was curled up on the living room floor, surrounded by legal papers, crying so hard I thought I might pass out. I hadn't eaten in 2 days, couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. Everything felt like it was falling apart. Then I found one of Dad's old notebooks. Inside was a note he wrote during his chemo days, probably something he never meant for anyone to see. It said, If she stays, give her everything. If she leaves, forgive her. She's already given more than anyone else ever would. That gave me the strength to fight. My lawyer argued that I had a constructive trust that Dad's verbal intent, combined with my care and the handwritten note, should be honored. He also argued equitable estoppel debt. My siblings never contributed to the house or his care, and now they were trying to benefit from my sacrifice. Kyle and Ava tried to argue. I manipulated Dad, that I isolated him, that he was too sick to make legal decisions. It was disgusting, truly. But in the end, the judge sided with me, not because the note was perfect, not because I had money or power, but because I had proof. Photos, records, testimonies from nurses, and neighbors who saw me every day, taking care of a man everyone else had abandoned. The house was awarded to me. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. Winning didn't bring Dad back. It didn't undo the years I spent alone, watching him fade. It didn't fill the hole left by a family who would rather sue me than thank me. But I did feel something: peace. For the first time in a long time, I walked through the house without looking over my shoulder. I opened the windows. I lit a candle in Dad's room. I sat on the porch and watched the sun go down, just like we used to. And for the first time in 5 years, I'd let myself rest. After I won the house in court, things went. It's quiet, not peaceful. Quiet, tense quiet. Kind where you know the storm isn't over, it's just circling back around. My siblings didn't even try to hide their bitterness. Kyle sent a cold text that read, "Hope it was worth tearing the family apart." Ava just unfollowed me on every platform and blocked my number like we were exes instead of blood and Mom. She barely spoke to me. She didn't come around, didn't check in. I only heard from her once after the ruling, a single voicemail. 2 minutes long, her crying and saying, "You should have shared. This was never just yours." She never once said she was sorry, never once acknowledged everything I gave up, so I did what I had to do. I grieved, not just for Dad, but for a family that never really existed the way I hoped it did. The truth is, you're the one who steps up, the responsible one. The caregiver, the rock people, expect you to stay strong forever. They think you're fine because you've been fine for everyone else for so long, but I wasn't fine. After Dad died and the legal mess finally settled, I fell apart in slow motion. I barely ate. I couldn't hold a thought. I'd stare at the walls for hours, not moving, not crying, just frozen. The silence in the house felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. That's when I started therapy, not because I'm some model of mental health or anything. Honestly, I felt like I was going crazy. Needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing it. That the way I was feeling, the anger, the guilt, the exhaustion, it was real. My therapist, Maria, told me something in our 3rd session that I've never forgotten. You've been surviving for 5 years. Now, you need to learn how to live again. I didn't know how to do that, but I was willing to try. One day, a letter came in the mail, not an email. A letter. It was from Ava. I almost threw it out, but something told me to open it. Inside was a single sheet of lined notebook paper. Her handwriting was rushed. Messy nothing, like the curated, filtered image she always showed the world. Here's what it said. I was angry because I felt left out. Not of the house, but of you. I know I wasn't there for Dad. I can't change that. But I want you to know I'm sorry. I was selfish. I thought I could outrun the pain, and now I see I just dumped it on you instead. I hope you're okay. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted to say it anyway. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't get mad. I just felt something shift. A few days later, I texted her, "Me, got your letter. Thank you for sending it. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I appreciate it." She replied in under a minute. "Ava, that's fair. I'm here when you are." Wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. But it was a thread. For the first time, I realized maybe not all bridges were completely burned. Kyle, though, was still ice cold. He sent Mom to speak for him. One afternoon, she showed up at my door looking like she hadn't slept in weeks. I didn't want to let her in, but I did. Part of me still wanted my mother. Even if she'd failed me in every way that counted, she sat in Dad's recliner, twisting a tissue between her fingers. "I don't know what to say," she finally whispered. "You don't have to say anything," I replied. "You just have to mean it." She looked up at me, and for the first time, she didn't look performative. She looked like a woman who had been left behind by her husband, by her own children, and maybe even by herself. "I wasn't strong enough," she said. "I saw what was happening, and I chose to look away. You were so capable, and I leaned on you too hard." I didn't say anything. Let her sit with that. Eventually, she said something I never expected. "I still think about him every day. I miss him. I miss us. But I understand why you needed to keep the house. He loved you so much." That broke me a little, and maybe healed me a little too. Weeks passed, and months. I started making changes to the house, not huge ones, but small things. I painted the kitchen. I planted sunflowers in the backyard because Dad loved them. I turned the spare room into a reading nook. It became mine not because I won it, but because I lived it. I got a remote job, started making new friends. I even went on a couple dates. I wasn't whole. I might never be, but I wasn't empty anymore. One evening, Ava came to visit. We sat on the porch just like Dad and I used to. She brought coffee and didn't say much at first. But when she did speak, it was honest. "I went to see Mom. She said she's trying. I don't know if I trust it yet, but I guess I'm trying to." I nodded. "I've been thinking," she said, "about Dad, about you. You deserve better than what we gave you." And I finally told her the truth. I didn't do it for the house. I did it because I couldn't let him die alone. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "No, and I'm sorry I made it." "Anything else?" We sat in silence after that. Not uncomfortable silence. Just two sisters, at least seeing each other. Kyle still hasn't reached out. I don't know if he ever will, but I've stopped waiting. I wish I could tell you there was some magical moment where everything clicked, where Kyle called, we cried it out, and the family somehow came back together. But real life isn't like that. Real life is messy and uneven. Sometimes healing comes in whispers instead of closure. Sometimes the most you get is peace with yourself, and maybe that's enough. It's been over a year since Dad passed. Years since the funeral, since the lawsuit, since my siblings showed up with more entitlement than grief. The house is quiet now, but it doesn't feel empty. I've filled it with my life, little by little. I framed an old photo of me and Dad, fishing on the lake, and hung it by the front door. Every time I leave, I see him smiling at me. I found routine's coffee on the porch, journaling in the evenings, calling Ava every Sunday. Yeah, we talk now. Not every day, but enough that we feel like sisters again. It's strange how time softens even the deepest wounds. Last Christmas, Ava came over. Just her. She brought a pie and a stack of photo albums she'd dug out of Mom's attic. We sat on the living room floor, flipping through memories like they were pages from a life we both forgot we lived. At one point, she pulled out a picture of the four of us, me, Kyle, Ava, and Dad. We were kids, holding sparklers on the front lawn. Dad had that goofy grin, one he only wore when he was caught off guard. "I forgot how happy we used to be," Ava whispered. "Me too," I said. But what I didn't say out loud, what I didn't have to, was that I missed Kyle, that I hated how things ended. I hated even more how I didn't miss our actual relationship. Just the idea of it. The version of him I always wished he could be in February. Mom invited us all over for dinner. She said she wanted to start fresh. Ava agreed to go. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me, so I showed up late, just in case I needed an excuse to leave early. The house looked smaller. Or maybe I just felt bigger, older, less willing to shrink to fit inside someone else's expectations. Kyle was there. He didn't speak to me. He barely looked at me, and you know what? That told me everything I needed to know. Some people don't change. Some people won't. After dinner, as I was walking to my car, Ava caught up with me. "I know you're wondering if this will ever be okay," she said. "I stopped wondering," I replied. "I'm just done trying to make people see me. I see me. That's enough now. Grief is weird. You think it's about losing someone? But it's also about losing what you thought your life would look like." I always imagined when Dad passed, we'd all lean on each other, hold hands at the funeral, cry and laugh and remember. Instead, it turned into a war zone. But through that war, I found out that I can say no, that I can protect what's mine, that I can draw a line in the sand and not apologize for it. One spring morning, I took Dad's old radio out to the backyard, the same one he used to play when he gardened. I tuned it to his favorite station's soft jazz because, of course, it was, and sat in the grass with a cup of coffee. The sun was warm. The house behind me stood still and solid. I closed my eyes and said, "I miss you." Not to anyone in particular. It's just into the wind. And for the first time, it didn't feel like something was missing. It felt like something had been left behind, a kind of love that stayed, even when the people who were supposed to show it didn't. A few weeks ago, Ava texted me a photo of her own small garden starting to bloom. Guess who finally learned how to keep a plant alive? She wrote, I smiled and texted back, "Dad would have made fun of you, but he'd be proud." People always talk about inheritance like it's money, a house, a car, some heirloom you can hold. But I think my real inheritance was something deeper. It was the strength to carry someone when they couldn't carry themselves, the courage to stand alone when no one showed up, and the ability to move forward, even when the road was nothing but rubble and regret. I live in this house now not because I fought for it, but because I earned it, and every creak of the floor, every flicker of light through the windows reminds me that I stayed. I stayed when no one else did, and in the end, that's what matters.